They slid the papers across the table without even looking at me. I didn't flinch. I folded my hands in my lap the way I learned to do decades ago when reacting only made things worse. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly betrayed by someone close to you, this story is for you. Don't blink. Every moment matters. Somewhere inside me, a quiet plan stayed exactly where it belonged. Not on my face. Not in my voice. It was Tuesday, just past 10 in the morning. The courthouse smelled like old paper and weak coffee. A fluorescent light above us flickered, humming like it was tired too. My sister sat to my left, dressed sharp, legs crossed, already nodding along as if the outcome had been decided long before we walked in. The lawyer cleared his throat and spoke about efficiency and final arrangements, words that felt rehearsed, polished smooth by use. All assets to be transferred immediately, he said, tapping the folder. His pen stopped inches from my elbow. I noticed things then. Small things. The way my sister didn't smile, not really. The way my mother avoided my eyes, staring instead at a crack in the wall. The way my father's hand shook once before he stilled it on the armrest. These weren't signs of agreement. They were signs of people rushing past something they didn't want to examine too closely. My heart beat slow and steady. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel heat or panic or the old sting of being overlooked. Instead, I felt alert. Awake. Like I'd stepped into cold air. The judge skimmed the first page, glasses low on his nose. This appears straightforward, he said. Straightforward. That word landed wrong. Nothing about this had ever been simple. Not the years of silence. Not the quiet expectations placed on me because I was the older sister, the calmer one, the one who didn't make scenes. My sister finally turned toward me. You're fine with this, right? She asked, soft but firm, the way she used to speak when she'd already decided for both of us. Her perfume drifted over, something floral and sharp, too much for a closed room. I looked at her and felt the weight of memory press against my ribs. Birthdays where my name was forgotten. Phone calls returned days late. Assumptions made because I didn't protest. She mistook my patience for permission. He always had. I just need a moment, I said. My voice sounded steady even to me. Before anything is finalized. The lawyer frowned. My sister's knee bounced once, then stilled. The judge glanced up, curious now. Time stretched. In that pause, I thought of the envelope sitting at home on my kitchen counter. Still sealed. Still waiting. I didn't think of what it meant. Only that it existed. Is there an objection? The judge asked. I shook my head slowly. Not yet. The air shifted. Papers rustled. Someone coughed behind us. My mother sighed, a sharp sound that cut deeper than words. Why are you doing this? She whispered, not angry, just tired. I didn't answer her. I was watching my sister's face. Watching the confidence tighten just slightly around her eyes. Watching the first hint of uncertainty creep in, like a hairline crack in glass. The judge leaned back. We can pause, he said. If there's cause. There is, I replied. I met my sister's gaze fully now. No softness. No apology. I'd like to wait for one more person. Her smile froze. Who? She asked. For a split second no one spoke. Even the hum of the lights seemed to soften. I could hear my own breathing, shallow now, measured the way it gets when you're bracing for impact. My sister leaned closer to me, her voice low. You don't want to do this, she said, not as a threat, but as a reminder of old patterns. I straightened my back in the hard wooden chair, feeling every one of my years, every compromise I'd ever swallowed. I wasn't shaking. That was new. Whatever was coming next, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I wasn't invisible anymore. I held my breath, letting the silence stretch just long enough to matter. The sound of footsteps echoed closer. Before I could answer, the courtroom door opened behind us. And every head turned before I did. A man stepped inside, not rushed, not apologetic. Just present. He wore a plain dark jacket, the kind men wear when they don't want to be remembered. The bailiff moved toward him, whispering something, but the man only nodded and held up a hand. I stayed still. I'd asked for time and time had answered. My sister twisted in her chair to look back, irritation flashing across her face before she masked it. That flicker told me more than any confession could have. The judge cleared his throat. We're in session, he said, but his attention lingered on the newcomer. The lawyer leaned toward my sister, whispering fast. I caught only fragments. Unexpected. Probably nothing. We proceed. Probably nothing. I pressed my fingers into my purse, grounding myself. The leather felt worn, familiar. I'd carried it for years. Inside were tissues, mints, and a folded note I hadn't meant to bring but did anyway. We'll take a short recess, the judge decided. 10 minutes. Chairs scraped. Papers shuffled. People stood too quickly like the air had thinned. My mother reached for my arm then pulled back, unsure. "What is this?" she asked, her voice brittle. I shook my head gently. "Not now." My sister stood and turned on me, her smile tight and public. "You always did love drama," she said, loud enough for others to hear. Then softer, close to my ear, "You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm fine," I replied. And I was. That startled me again. In the hallway the lawyer paced, phone pressed to his ear. My sister followed him, heels clicking sharp against the tile. I watched the way he angled his body away from her like he needed space. That hadn't happened before. A clerk brushed past me, papers clutched to her chest, and murmured, "Excuse me," without meeting my eyes. I caught a glimpse of a folder tab as she passed. My last name. Typed wrong. Missing a letter. I leaned against the wall, the cool seeping through my sleeve. This building had a way of making everyone feel small. I'd felt it plenty of times before. Today, though, something else hummed underneath. A sense of imbalance. Like a picture hung just slightly crooked. The man who'd arrived late stood alone near the water fountain. He didn't look at me, not directly, but his reflection met mine in the dull metal panel. He gave the smallest nod. That was all. No words. My pulse picked up, but I kept my face neutral. If my sister noticed, she didn't show it. She was too busy hissing into her phone now, pacing faster. When the bailiff called us back, the room felt different. Not louder. Quieter. The kind of quiet that waits. The judge returned, adjusting his glasses again. He asked the lawyer a question, something procedural, but his eyes flicked to the empty chair where confidence had been sitting earlier. My sister answered instead, too quickly. The judge paused, pen hovering. "Let counsel speak," he said. I almost smiled. The lawyer cleared his throat, shuffled his papers, then shuffled them again. "There's been a request," he said, choosing each word carefully. My sister shot him a look sharp enough to cut. I felt my shoulders relax a fraction. Careless. That's what rushing makes people. I spoke before anyone could stop me. "I asked for time," I said calmly. "I believe it's reasonable." The judge studied me, really studied me this time. "On what grounds?" I met his gaze. "Because some things were missed." My sister laughed, short and sharp. "By who?" she demanded. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. The man in the dark jacket took a step forward and I felt the air shift again, heavier now. My sister turned slowly, confusion creasing her forehead. For the first time that morning she looked unsure of where to stand. The judge raised a hand. "We'll hear this properly," he said. "Everyone take a seat." As I sat, I felt the years press in, not with weight but with clarity. All the times I'd stayed quiet. All the times I'd been told it was easier that way. I placed my hands flat on the table and breathed. They'd taken it while I was sitting right there. But now they were starting to realize I'd been watching all along. They were starting to realize I'd been watching all along, and that knowledge followed me as we stood and gathered our things. The judge spoke quietly with the clerk. The lawyer kept his eyes on his notes, and my sister busied herself straightening papers that no longer felt solid beneath her hands. We were dismissed back into the hallway, not as a break this time but as a pause with purpose. People moved differently now. Slower. Careful. I walked toward the bench near the windows, my knees stiff, my body reminding me of every year I'd lived. As I sat, I noticed the man in the dark jacket speak briefly to the clerk. She nodded, then disappeared through a side door. That door stayed shut longer than seemed necessary. My sister hovered near the lawyer, her voice low and sharp. "You said this was clean," she whispered. He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his temple, then said something I couldn't hear. Her mouth tightened. I felt no satisfaction yet, only a steady focus. This wasn't about catching her out. It was about letting the truth surface on its own. I reached into my purse and touched the folded note again. I didn't open it. I already knew what it said. Names. Dates. A reminder of a conversation I'd had months earlier with a woman at the bank who'd hesitated before answering a simple question. At the time I told myself it was nothing. Today I knew better. The hallway clock ticked loud enough to be annoying. I watched people pass, strangers with their own worries, their own quiet battles. A janitor pushed a cart past us, the smell of cleaning solution sharp in the air. He glanced at us, curious, then moved on. Life didn't stop just because ours felt suspended. The lawyer finally stepped away from my sister and approached me. His smile was thin, professional. "We're just clarifying a few things," he said. "These matters can get complicated." "They shouldn't," I replied. "If everything is as it should be." He studied my face as if searching for something. "You've been thorough," he said carefully. I didn't confirm or deny it. I simply nodded. He exhaled, a sound that carried more weight than he meant it to. When he walked away, his shoulders were slumped in a way they hadn't been before. The clerk returned, holding a slim file. She handed it to the judge, who skimmed it standing up, lips pressed together. He asked a question. She answered. He nodded once. That single motion sent a ripple through the hallway. My sister noticed. Her foot tapped faster now. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, not pain but memory. Years of being the one who kept records, who saved receipts, who remembered dates because no one else did. I'd been told I was careful to a fault. Turns out, careful has its uses. My mother sat beside me, her hands folded tight. "What did you do?" she asked softly. "I paid attention," I said. She looked at me, then really looked, and something shifted between us. Not approval. Understanding. The judge called us back in. As we walked, my sister brushed past me, her shoulders stiff. "You think you're clever," she muttered. I didn't answer. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavier, like a storm pressing close. Papers were rearranged. Seats creaked. The man in the dark jacket took a place near the aisle, silent. As I sat, I realized something else. This wasn't just about money or documents. It was about patterns. About who gets believed and who gets overlooked. I straightened my spine and placed my hands on the table. They thought no one would follow the trail. They were wrong. I could feel my pulse in my wrists, steady but insistent, reminding me I was still here, still capable. Whatever came next would not erase the years behind me, but it might finally give them meaning. I wasn't chasing victory. I was standing my ground, and that felt like something I could carry forward without shame or regret. The room waited, and for once so did I, unafraid and fully awake at last. The judge cleared his throat, and that small sound carried more authority than any raised voice. Everyone straightened. Chairs creaked. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz more quietly, as if they knew better than to interrupt. I folded my hands again, not to hide anything but to steady myself. My sister sat rigid beside her lawyer, chin lifted, daring the room to contradict her. The man in the dark jacket stepped forward when the judge nodded. He spoke plainly, without drama, and that made people listen. He introduced himself, then explained why he was there, using words like review and verification. Ordinary words. Dangerous ones. My sister shifted, crossing and uncrossing her legs, the rhythm too fast. I watched her hands instead of her face. They betrayed her first. The judge asked questions. Short ones. The kind that leave little room to wander. Dates were mentioned. Then numbers. Not accusations, just requests for clarity. My sister answered quickly at first, then slower, glancing at her lawyer as if checking whether she was still on script. He avoided her eyes now. That felt important. I felt heat rise in my chest, not triumph but something close to grief. I hadn't wanted this to be necessary. I'd hoped, foolishly, that fairness might happen on its own. Still, as each answer landed a little wrong, I felt the ground tilt. Not under me. Under her. The judge turned a page in the file. "This document," he said, tapping it once, "doesn't match the copy submitted earlier." His tone stayed even, but the room leaned toward him. My sister laughed softly, too softly. "That must be a clerical thing," she said. "These offices make mistakes all the time." The clerk spoke up then. Her voice trembled, but she held steady. "I double-checked," she said. "The dates were altered after the first filing." The word altered hung in the air. My sister's smile faded. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her lawyer finally spoke, asking for a moment, but the judge shook his head. "We're past that," he said. I noticed my mother press her hand to her chest. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. I wanted to reach for them, but I stayed where I was. This was the cost of truth. It didn't arrive gently. More questions followed. About accounts. About transfers. Each one tightened the circle. My sister's voice grew sharp, then thin. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're making it sound like I did something wrong." No one answered right away. Silence can be cruel when it stops protecting you. The judge looked at her over his glasses. "I'm asking for explanations," he said. "Not reactions." That was when the room finally turned. Not all at once. In pieces. A raised eyebrow. A pen set down. A chair angled away from her instead of toward. People who had nodded earlier now watched with distance. He felt it. I could see it in the way she pulled her arms in close, like she was suddenly cold. She glanced at me then, really glanced, eyes searching for help she'd never asked for before. For a moment I almost gave it. Habit is powerful. But then I remembered every time I'd been told to let things go. To be the bigger person. To wait my turn. I met her gaze and said nothing. The man in the dark jacket handed the judge another paper. The judge read it slowly. "We'll need to suspend proceedings," he said at last. "There are discrepancies that require review." My sister stood abruptly. "You can't do this," she said. Her voice cracked just slightly. "This is my life." The judge didn't raise his voice. "That's why we're doing it carefully." As the bailiff moved closer, not threatening, just present, my sister sat back down. Her shoulders sagged. Something old and brittle broke in her expression. I felt no joy in that. Only a deep, steady resolve. The room no longer belonged to her. And for the first time I understood that it never truly had. The judge let the silence sit before speaking again. "This matter is no longer about distribution," he said. "It's about accuracy and accountability." His voice was calm, but the words landed heavy. My sister didn't argue this time. She stared at the table, her reflection faint in the polished surface, like someone she barely recognized. The man in the dark jacket stepped forward once more. He opened the envelope I'd been thinking about since morning and removed several pages. Seeing them in his hands made my stomach tighten. Not fear. Relief. He explained carefully how records from years ago had been quietly amended. How signatures had been mirrored, not forged boldly, but adjusted just enough to pass without notice. The room listened. No one interrupted. My sister shook her head. "That's not what happened," she said, but the words sounded hollow, like they'd been used up already. Her lawyer didn't speak. He sat back, hands folded, eyes lowered. "That told me everything I needed to know." The judge turned to me. "You brought this to our attention," he said. It wasn't a question. "I didn't change anything," I replied. "I just didn't look away." My mother began to cry then. Quietly. Not for the money. For the years. My father put his arm around her, his hand trembling. I felt something soften inside me. This wasn't about punishing my sister. It never was. It was about stopping the lie from becoming permanent. The ruling came in pieces. Proceedings halted. Accounts frozen pending review. Authority reassigned temporarily. No dramatic slam of a gavel. Just decisions spoken plainly that changed everything. My sister listened as if from far away. When it was over, she finally looked at me again. "You planned this," she said. I thought about correcting her. About explaining the difference between planning and refusing to disappear. Instead I said, "I paid attention." She laughed once, bitter. "You always did think details mattered." "They do," I said. "When they're the truth." We were dismissed. People stood, collected coats, avoided eye contact. My sister lingered, unsure where to go without being led. For the first time in my life I felt no pull to follow her, to fix things for her. That role was done. Outside, the afternoon light felt too bright. The sky was clear, painfully blue. I stepped onto the courthouse steps and breathed in the city air, car exhaust and winter sun. My knees ached. My hands shook now that it was over. That was all right. I let it happen. My mother took my hand. "I didn't know," she said. "I know," I answered. And I meant it. My sister walked past us without a word. Her shoulders were hunched, her stride uneven. I watched her go, feeling the last thread of obligation loosen. I wished her no harm. I simply wished myself free. At home later, I made tea and sat at my kitchen table. The envelope was gone from the counter, its job finished. The house was quiet in a way it had never been before. Not lonely. Honest. I thought about what I'd lost. Time. Trust. The comfort of believing things would work out if I stayed quiet. I hadn't won everything. Some things don't come back once they're spent. But I'd gained something else. My voice. My footing. The knowledge that even at this age I could still stand up and be counted. That night, as the light faded from the window, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not victory. Not revenge. Recognition. I had taken back myself, and this time I intended to keep her. If this story stayed with you, you're not alone. Subscribe for more emotional, powerful stories about resilience, betrayal, and finding strength when it matters most.